promise. All right, we're here for the Arrow panel. Who's up to date? Who's caught up? Yeah. All right. Warning, there may be spoilers, but what we got for you right now, coming up, the lovely Willa Holland, the Queen. And my doppelganger of the day, it's Manu Bennett, Slade Wilson. We're stuck. Calm safety. So, all right, so this is exciting. You guys are here. Arrow. So where do we start? Well,
Thea kind of kicked my ass in the last episode I was in.
And speaking of Thea kicking ass, your character has evolved crazily over the series, and of course, resulting in you kicking his ass. Have you been having fun with the character evolution?
I don't see how anyone could not have fun doing all that stuff. It's been an absolute wild ride that I have not wanted to hop off of since this season 3 started. I mean, first time in Court of Maltese, getting to do all that sparring with Malcolm, all the way to coming back to Starling, and then like actually doing that shooting of Laurel Lance was really sad. But there's been so many of these like levels and layers to Thea that have been able to evolve in the last 9 months of her trajectory, and it's been phenomenal to play around with. I could not be any happier, actually.
Now, based on that same thing, you've been around since season 1, and your evolution from the island, from being Slade, transforming into Deathstroke, and of course, it was ridiculous. What were your thoughts on that?
I just love the character, it was like in Spartacus, it was kind of like the reverse. I started off with a very, very dark character that then became kind of like the friend to Spartacus, and became more of a whole person, and it was a beautiful journey doing it that way. Coming onto Arrow, it was in the reverse. It was being Oliver's friend, his mentor, and then basically being torn apart by circumstance and by Mirakuru. And it was interesting trying to sustain the character's nobility, his honor, through a period that really the changes were, it was intermittently just Mirakuru, and then it was kind of like this deep-seated kind of resentment because of the death of Shadow, and it was sort of sometimes sidestepping what the script would say to try to keep an overall momentum happening with the character that would keep him in alignment with what was going on the show, and I guess what the fans have always wanted from Deathstroke. So yeah, look, I mean, at this point, there's a lot of questions about whether I can keep on doing Deathstroke in the show just because I'm doing a show called Shannara. But look, there's fan support, there's great writers, and at the end of the day, something's going to happen. And I don't know what it is, but whatever. It's out there, and anything's possible.
Now, one of the things I just trade this one up. We don't really need that one. One of the things I noticed that so Thea, I mean, with Deathstroke, I mean, fans kind of know where Deathstroke's going, and they sort of rewrote Thea's character somewhat. So, did you know where you were going as the second, even into the second season, where your character was going to end up?
I have been just in the dark every episode of this TV show, as everybody in this room has been. When I signed on to the show, the whole idea of Speed or Red Arrow or Arsenal, all the possibilities, was thrown into the first meeting. Like they totally talked about the possible evolutions and all the amazing ways that it could go, and all the different layers that it could happen with her. And then it definitely took a little while to get to that point, but the beauty of that was it was building her origin story. It was almost like she was having Starling City and having to go through all that stuff in that ever since her brother came back was like her version of the island almost. She just got pummeled and destroyed by every human being in her life to the point where she couldn't trust anybody, and she had to run away with the only person you wouldn't, the one person you expect nobody to think is safe with. Malcolm Merlin is not the kind of guy you're like, yeah, let me go on vacation with you for a couple months and just see how it goes. It's like, definitely not, right? You would think there would have to be an underlying reason why she went there, and it was just because the way I've always said about Thea and Malcolm's relationship really was, except for now, things have definitely changed. But when they were training together, and the reason why she went to Puerto Maltese was because at that point, every single person has lied to her, even up to her mother's death. Her mother was lying out of her mouth up until that happened, and then her mom dies before she can even clear the air. So there's all of this crazy stuff. Her boyfriend lied to her, brother's lied to her. I mean, yeah, Malcolm's a pretty bad guy, but he's never lied about it. He's been completely upfront with like who he is. He describes why he thought killing 503 people was the right thing to do. Not that it was, but in his mind, it kind of was okay. So at least he hadn't lied to her until, you know, he drugged her and put a bow in her hand and told her to go kill Sarah Lance. But that was a bit of a bad one, and then changed the trajectory for their relationship. But yeah, I think Thea's definitely been through the ringer a lot.
The writers have been really good about giving us character investment. They make us care about the characters. And, you know, between backstories and the things that they put you guys through. I mean, even Slade, between being driven crazy by Shadow and the things that happen on the island, and obviously Marakuru, it's pretty crazy. Oh, yes, exactly. That's Shadow, everyone, just so now, both of your roles have, I mean, yours out of the gate had a lot of physicality going on with it, and yours is certainly evolving into that. How much stuff, and we'll start with Manu, did you have to learn for that role, or did you already come into it with some stuff that you knew from Spartacus or something like that?
You know, there's definitely a difference between the way stunts are handled in America and Canada in comparison to New Zealand. And it really comes down to, it comes down to safety rules, it comes down to stunt unions and the strength of stunt unions, it comes down to, in New Zealand we have this thing called ACC, where if you're injured on the workplace, your employee is not responsible. It becomes a government health issue. And so basically they can say, well, just go out there and kill yourselves, and it doesn't fall back on us. If we performed Spartacus the way that we performed it in New Zealand, or tried to in Canada or America, they would never have let us. I think there's just too much, there's a different amount of red tape involved in that. People can sue for injuries and da-da-da-da. You can't do that in New Zealand. So what happened was we were just given free rein to do all our own stuff in New Zealand. And we did some pretty aggressive stuff, you know. And I think Spartacus spoke volumes about that. You know, when I came onto Arrow, I bought all of this attitude that I'd had from Spartacus, and I realized straight away that I was on a different playing field, even though it's hard for me to reel that stuff back in because it's part of my reality as an actor. But you know, James Bamford, who runs the stunts up in Arrow, I said to him, mate, how come I can't do my own fight scenes? You know, I'm just so used to doing that. And he said to me something that was really interesting, because on Spartacus, all the stunt guys were all gladiators anyway, so they were going to be on set every day, working every day, regardless. That, you know, they were either doing stunt work or they were in the background as gladiators. But with Arrow, suddenly James said to me, listen, you know, James Macalopoulos, who's your stunt double, you know, if you do the stunt, he doesn't get to come in and work today. And you know, James is a great friend of mine. He's just had a baby. Well, at the time, he just had a baby. You know, and you got to really pull back and think. You know, there's a big team involved. You know, and you've got to just, you know, sometimes look at it and go like, well, okay, maybe I'm not doing the stunts because the stunt guy's coming in. I was not used to it, but that happened, and I think at the end of the day, it made no difference to the end result for this particular show, and it was, you know, it was part and parcel of moving forward and learning the ways things are done differently.
Gotcha. And Willa, what about you? Now, I know I just saw behind the scenes on one of the long takes they did with you and John Barrowman in your fight scene, and how they mixed in the stunt actors with you guys. So how much stuff did you get to learn?
Well, I have not seen that, and I want to see that now, but I have done quite a bit lately. Before the show started, I started going into a bit of training. James wanted me to just kind of bulk out a little bit. And then, but it's talking about the beginning of season 3, and then when it came to the first couple of fight scenes, I had zero training whatsoever. He had, like, other than physical, like, putting on weight, he had never put a sword in my hand. I was like, what is happening, guys? This feels really dangerous. I'm like walking around with a really long metal rod in front of people where there's like glass and cameras and everything. It's just probably didn't seem the most safe. And he was like, yeah, no, you're not holding that thing except for like the last minute. So at first I was like, oh, okay, so this is the way it goes. There's just somebody that does it all for me. And he's like, no, you're supposed to learn. And then finally he's been teaching me on the side, and I've been learning through katana, which is like this amazing type of martial arts with swordplay and archery and all these amazing things. But it's definitely been a bit of an evolution for Thea. And as from the beginning of season 3 to the end of season 3, I have done drastic amounts of stunts towards the end. Like I definitely was the only person standing up on that like little arch thingy when Steven was standing over Diggle and about to shoot him, or with the knife, and I got to shoot the arrow. That was really cool. And I got to shoot in my brother's arm. It was kind of cool. Something I've been like wanting to do. I mean, the first time you really shoot an arrow, aside being under the drug influence of something your father made you do to kill somebody, should be pretty fun, right? It was definitely not fun shooting my brother for Thea, but for me, personally as Willa, I was like, it felt really good. I kept telling Steven, I was like, this is awesome, you realize that, right? Like, I get to shoot you in the arm. It was great.
I guess that doesn't want to happen all that often, right?
No, he never gets hurt really, unless it's by Ra's al Ghul or by you, or by like a man. Like, no women like have like hurt him like physically, like really physically. So I was like, how awesome was it to be his little sister standing up there and shooting him in the arm? And then he walks away all cool, like it didn't hurt. It hurt, okay? It really hurt.
And it left a mark.
Yeah, it left a mark. Yeah, he's gonna have a scar right here now, guys, from being put in him.
All right, so you've mentioned that you are generally kept in the dark about it. So
yes.
Where would you like to see your character go next? And if you have spoilers, please don't give them, because none of us really want to.
I have no spoilers, actually. They do not tell me anything. So anything that I really do say that pertains to season 4 is all my own hopes and wishes and dreams. It's got nothing to do with what the writers or producers have said, because specifically they have said nothing other than to keep training, which is what I have been doing all year. That's pretty much the only hint they've given me, not that it's really anything. But I would hope that, you know, she maybe would get her own version of a costume, not so much pointed as to, I mean, I don't know if it's true, because they have not said anything to me at all. I've just been like, guys, come on, like, can I get my own? Like, throw a little yellow in there, maybe? Like, it should be, right? Or maybe a cape or something? Like, I don't know. Again, all what I am asking for, and nothing that they have said that they were going to do. So I have high hopes, as I'm sure all of you do, that she's gonna speedy the heck out in season 4. So we'll see.
To be determined. Now, Manu, the last we saw Slade was left on the island, and you mentioned Shannara, which I know this is an Arrow panel, but I'm a big fan of the book. I've read the whole Sword of Shannara series. If you haven't, read it. And I understand you're going to be Alanon, is that right?
Yeah. It's you know, Shannara's, it's a little bit like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. It's got like quite a big budget MTV are throwing at it, and so, you know, it's what's really great for me was is that it's shooting back in New Zealand, which is my home country, and the crew that I'm working with are the same crew that I work with on Spartacus. And it was like going home to family, and it's good knowing that back in New Zealand, you know, for all these guys that I work with, we've now got another big show that they're going to make. So you know, all the sets are quite very dramatic. You know, it is just like Lord of the Rings or something. But I'm playing like this character called Alanon, who's he's like Gandalf meets Crixus meets Deathstroke or something. You know, he's badass. Like, he does this thing with his pulse with his hand, and it's like, if I do that, this guy here would go flying into the fight. It's really cool, you know. But you know, there's you know, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, everything's a tapestry. These days the market is so well equipped, you know. I know that, you know, all these elements of the guys that I'm working with on the production level in New Zealand is way up there. They've been doing Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe. All of the artists, you know, the people who do lighting, sound, costume, blah, 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 blah. Some of the directors that I work with on Spartacus are back working on the Shannara show, so you know, all the elements are there, but still you just never know until it rolls out how it's going to be appreciated. So, you know, I mean, you know, I know a lot of the fans here have come up and said, oh, you know, when are you back on Arrow? And I can't give that answer. But when I say that I'm going to be on Shannara, they're saying, oh, we look forward to seeing you on that. So, you know, having your patronage for that will be much appreciated. And I think I can say to you that I'm making Al-Anon a strong character. You know, the producers have given me some really good feedback on it so far. So, who's aware of Shannara? Anybody?
You guys have homework to do tonight. There'll be an essay tomorrow.
Okay, well we got a launch at Comic Con in San Diego, so you'll hear more about it soon. But it's pretty badass. And Austin Butler, who used to be on Carrie Diaries.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Oh, he played your boyfriend.
Yeah, he played my boyfriend.
Yeah. Well, Austin's sensational. He's such a good guy.
He's the best.
Yeah, he's gold
interject
sharp.
on something though? When you were describing your character, saying that you were between with your whoosh thing in the hand, all I kept thinking about was Sith Lords, right?
He's Darth Vader.
I mean, right? Like, yeah, you're like a Sith Lord.
Yeah. You know, I actually think that Al-Anons are really, you know, it's a well-written character. I mean, you know, the people who do know Shannara, put your hands up. I mean, he's pretty badass, eh? Yeah, and you know, I didn't know much about him, but I actually just ran into a couple of my friends happened to have read it when, you know, this book's been around for a while, and they said, are you playing that? You know, I sort of I had the same feeling, because when I did Arrow, I had no idea that I was playing Deathstroke Slade Wilson, even when I arrived in Vancouver to start shooting. They offered me the job after an audition, and I just knew it was a military guy. Then when I got to the airport, my manager rang me and said, oh, you've been listed in Variety online. And I looked and went, Manu Bennett cast as Slade Wilson. And that wasn't the character that I read for in my audition in LA. And I was standing at the counter at the immigration. I went, they've made a mistake. I don't know who I'm not playing Slade Wilson. And the guy behind the immigration desk in Vancouver went, dude, are you playing Deathstroke? And I was like, I don't know, I just flew here to do this job. Anyway, man, he's the badass at the DC Comic Con. I had sort of no idea. It took a long time for me to actually find that out. But you know, having heard from the people who've read Shannara, you know, Al-Anon's a good, strong character.
Yeah, you're actually going to have a history of playing some pretty heavily iconic characters in our geek world, so that's pretty cool. We've got like you know, 30 or so minutes. Do you guys want to get some questions from those guys? All right. Right now that are related. I mean, there's everything.
I mean, we've done 3, so.
Yeah, and so you guys are both playing some pretty big major characters. How does it feel to be Deathstroke, to be Slade Wilson, to be Thea Queen, to be these iconic characters that people know and love, and then meet your fans, and you know, obviously they want to talk shop. So, but what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, you know, I like that people feel, you know, like the biggest litmus test about coming to conventions is standing in front of a person and looking at their emotional behavior to you in response to them having shared you in part of their life. And seeing people go like, oh, you know, seeing a kid or a real DC comic fan just go, oh man, you just made Deathstroke, you know, so real, touching, you know. And I tried. I didn't become an actor because I wanted to have a camera in my face. I became an actor because, you know, there's emotions I had to deal with in my life and a lot of personal tragedy when I was young, and I found the positive way to do it was through the arts. And I found that, you know, instead of looking at math and stuff like that, which didn't make any sense to me when I was going through emotional things as a young kid, I found out that things like dance and music and other, you know, things of the art form were what actually allowed me to express the person that I'd become because of tragedy. Now, tying that into becoming an actor now, you know, in my 40s now, and you know, using 20 years of finessing this art form and turning it into a signal, I'm glad that I can take all that rage, all that anger, all that sorrow, all that pain, all those things that make me a person, made me an actor, and take them and channel them in a controlled way through a set of circumstances on a set that get to your screen and go through to you. So if Deathstroke feels real to you and smells real to you, it's because he is real. Because I don't try to hold back those emotional things that are charged within me. and I let them go in these characters, and that's my responsibility. And when I get that feedback from people, you know, who go, you know, you've taken that character to a level, it's because, you know, they're two-dimensional on the comic page, but then if you want them to be in the hands of people who can bring them justice, you've got to hope those people have got emotions and they're willing to let go of those emotions for you guys. And that's what I do. And it's not big-headedness, I've got an ego about it, that's just all that I do. And I'll continue doing it, so, you know.
That's a hard one to follow.
For me personally, about 2 or 3 months ago I was at PallyFest, and it was my first time at PallyFest, and I got asked a question that turned out to not be a question, it was more of a comment. Somebody had taken the microphone and said that if the comment was for me, Thea Queen, and proceeded to say that, he was like, so, I just wanted you to know, you're my least favorite character on the show. And this was in front of about 5,000 people. And I'm just like, okay. And then he's like, yeah, you've basically been a wet blanket for like the last 3 years? I'm like, oh, okay, God, thanks. Where is this going? Sorry. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to know, like, why? I'm like, I don't know, and I looked to the writers, and he's like, no. He's like, I'm not done speaking. I'm like, okay. And he's like, so listen, you are my least favorite character on the show, or you've been my least favorite character on the show, you've been a wet blanket, you kind of sucked, you've been a whiny little girl, all these things, like listing off all these things, which, I mean, like, I can't blame him, he's kind of right in some field, but then he looked at me and he goes, but, I'm like, oh, so there's a change in this thing, okay, where is this going? He says, now, since your resurrection and everything, and since the Slade episodes and all that, like, now you're my favorite character on the show. And I was like, oh, okay. So there's a light at the end of this tunnel. This is really scary, sitting on a stage with everyone in my cast, and my writers and my creators, and having this guy in front of thousands of people tell me that he basically hated me as a human being. I mean, not as a human being, but however he's been perceived of me, he's just hated it. And I was like, okay, that feels really good. But to hear finally, because I mean, to be honest, I don't blame anybody before the original responses to Thea were you know, not necessarily the most positive, because for a while they kept hearing the Speedy name be dropped and all these things be dropped, but at the end of the day, she was just being whiny, taking drugs, crashing cars, and breaking up with Colton. I mean, like, what the hell, guys? Why would she ever do that stuff? So I got even mad at her at some point. So I was like, what is going on? And realizing that it all was for a trajectory that is bringing her to where she is now, and seeing the reaction that the difference in the reactions that I've gotten from 6 months ago to now has been an incredibly humbling and amazing experience, because growing up as a DC nerd, like getting the show was the greatest thing that's ever happened to my life. Hands down, getting this pilot was phenomenal. Like, I was just so stoked, man. Best thing ever, hands down. Necessarily for the show, but it was from leaving LA for it. I got a tattoo of De Niro and all that stuff, like, right after it happened. It was just so special to me. Like, this whole scenario, everything that's happened since then has been so amazing. So hearing the fact that people actually are responding to it is the greatest thing that could ever happen to me, because I understand why everybody else would love the rest of the characters on the show. There's not really too much of a reason up until the last few episodes to really like Thea. And I don't blame you guys. Like, she's kind of been like a, you know, little bitch sometimes. So it's been really nice to drop that whole, you know, silly little girl act for the last 6 months, pick up a bow and kick some ass, man. It's been the best thing ever. And to get it perceived from you guys is the reason why I'm happy to do this work. It's the only reason why it makes it all worth it. Like, hands down. It's awesome as hell, and I thank you all for continually watching it. It's amazing.
I think I can speak for the majority of the state, yes.